that Resolution 3 establishes or asks for your approval for changed director fee levels up to the move from transition board to full board. Now, once that happens, then I think Councillor Dick's quite right. We would once again go out and determine what the role of the HBRC holding company was going forward, and get another independent assessment. How it would change, we wouldn't know. But when we move from a transition board to a full board, we need to decide what the task is and what the appropriate fee levels are. And that wouldn't be a hugely time-consuming report if we get it from the Institute of Directors. They're familiar with all the data. We would just come up with revised time commitments.
So on that basis, should there be an addition to the recommendation, do you think?
Just another sentence on the end.
Yeah, I'm fine.
And further review thereafter.
Yeah, that's fine.
So is someone prepared to move that?
Chair,
And then
I will.
You have another question?
No, I'd like to move.
No, Councillor Douglas indicated he wished to move. You wish to move, Councillor Douglas?
I'll defer and be in second if Councillor.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to move is that we set the base directive fee at the low amount of $30,000, which reflects a public service component, and the base chair fee at $54,000 for the same reason. So I don't know if Councillor Douglas will support that or not.
I thought you would move that, so
So we have a seconder for that?
Just as a point of order, Mr. Chairman, are we
Yep.
obliged to change the Constitution first? Might be a more appropriate idea.
Well, are you... Sorry, that's a good point. Councillor Rem as well, are you moving all of the whole resolution, but you're settling on the lower rate?
Councillor Curtin is right. We need to remove them separately and do 2 before 3.
Well, I think we can do them on block, can't we? Well, let's do 1 and 2. Okay. So you're happy to move 1 and 2?
Mm-hmm.
Someone happy to second that? Councillor Douglas, any discussion? Councillor, you wish to speak as mover?
Changing the Constitution is my procedure.
1 and 2. Okay. Moved.
I'll reserve my right to speak.
You don't wish to speak at this time. The seconder wishes to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's just... Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think it's just being practical where we are and where we might go after contractual close or whatever the terminology is. And I think this just allows this shareholder to have a special resolution to use as appropriate.
Councillor Gilbertson.
I'm just curious, Mr. Chairman, as to how you motivate the council directors when they're sitting there doing as much, if not more, work than the guy beside them getting $35,000.
Wish to speak?
Well, Mr. Chair, I oppose the motion. I don't think we should change the Constitution. It's set out in a statement of intent to the public. We went more than simply issuing the Constitution itself, which is made public. What we did is had a statement of intent, which is very, very explicit around what was intended here. The statement of intent included the proposition to the public that this was not an overtly commercial activity, and that there was a high level of public good element in it. Those directors that put their hand up to be involved knew that, and they did so at face value at that time with a public good hat on. It occurs to me in the horribly conflicted advice being provided from the board of from the Institute of Directors. If we're talking about conflicts of interest here, we've got the Institute telling us how wonderful they are and how much and how highly paid those directors should now be, forgetting all the way through, and I couldn't reference it anywhere in that document, that the element of public good was in fact included in their thinking and considerations. Maybe I can be proven wrong in that, but I couldn't see it. Is this there, Mr. Drury?
Yeah, Mr. Caldwell did point out the page.
Sorry. Order. We're
Yes, it's all right. Pulling a leg a bit. Mr. Chair, what we've got is a belated move for snouts in the trough. You put your hand up for public good, stick with it, and don't backtrack on it. So I'm opposing this.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, we're only talking about 1 and 2. We're not actually talking about the quantity of fees at this stage, not 3.
Mr. Chair, I'm not going to debate directly one-on-one with my colleague, Mr. Douglas, other than to say that the intent entirely of the change to the Constitution is to ensure a transaction that sees directors paid more handsomely than they are, and that's why I'm opposing the change to the Constitution. The Constitution, as it was stated to the public and confirmed by way of statement of intent, is that this is a public good activity. We will reward at a low level people that are prepared to put their hand up to transact the public good, and my concern is that by opening the door to directors being paid outside of a triennially agreed arrangement and at the rate that was determined at the start, then we've walked away from that element and therefore oppose the change to the Constitution.
Other speakers. Councillor Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I support the resolution as it is stated. I think that this allows circumstances to be addressed as circumstances demand, and I really resent any comment that anyone here is only here for pecuniary interest only, and I think that it's beholden on us to see that we treat our directors fairly and equitably, and this gives us the process of doing so. I stand by the entire statement that no directors' fees will be payable to council directors, because it's always been my belief that that is the public good. And it's been raised in questions as to how you motivate those people. It hasn't been raised in debate, but in a question. And I'd say that the motivation is very strong because of the sense of public good, and I guess that's why you stand for office in the first place. You don't stand, presumably, because it's an easy ride as a councillor to make money. You stand there because you are concerned about the public good. So I think there is still a public good, a very strong public good, but it does enable us to proceed with fairness and to treat people in an equitable manner, and that is only the right thing to be able to do. So I do support this motion.
Councillor Remus, all you wish to sum up?
Well, Mr. Chair, we're just talking about 1 or 2, which is essentially a procedural motion. So I'm going to save my concerns for number 3, which is the next thing.
Thank you. I'll put the motion in, 1 and 2, just so we're clear. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Okay. Now, who's willing to move item 3? You wish to move item 3?
I wish to move, as I mentioned before, with the amendment, or rather that the base director fee is $30,000 and the base chair fee be increased to $54,000.
We have a seconder for that. Councillor Gilbertson, you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a pragmatic move on my part, which ensures that the public good component, which is mentioned in the statement of intent, which the Board of Directors have put forward and have agreed to, and which they have stated that their fees are based on commercial norms but discounted to reflect the public service element, that this signals that this is very clear to the public that this is what is not going to happen, and it's not just a minuscule decrease of $1,000 or $2,000. It's a bit more weighty than that, and I think that it's a fair way of recompensing, and it's a middle ground which I think sort of covers the concerns of the directors and the public. So I'd urge my colleagues to support this.
Councillor Gilbertson.
Mr Chairman, inspired by Councillor Curtin's Churchillian rhetoric, I'd like to start by going off slightly at a tangent. And the question is, how much is enough? In the case of the council of directors, they're saying naught is enough because it's a public service. And the other ones, the directors are saying we need more, and I certainly take on board the great stuff about conflicts of interest, and the directors saying that the Directors Institute setting the fees is an interesting concept. But philosophically, how much is enough? I'll just go to the slight aside, but a sergeant pilot in 75 Squadron in 1942 with a life expectancy of 6 to 8 weeks was paid £2.10 a week, which is about, in modern terms, about $150 a week. So people prepared to sacrifice their lives for very little. So how much is enough for these directors? I go back to the point that if we give them this $35,000, I find it very difficult, even with the best, no, if we go to 35, if we give them this money, I would say it's very hard, even with the best will in the world, for you 3 directors who may not be there next time, to sit there to give you a full, I mean, put it this way, if someone's on 35 grand, I'm on naught, it would be quite hard to motivate myself. So if we have to do this, and I say how much is enough. I mean, do directors really need $35,000, $30,000 for attending? Anyway, that's the point I'm making. So I'm happy to, if we're going to increase this or whatever we can do it slowly. And as I say, if there's a public good aspect, you could actually ask them if they just quite like to serve their country and accept the present fees, because it is a landmark in terms of achievement, in lifetime's achievement. This is not just like making plastic tickies or something. This is something that these guys can be proud of and their grandchildren can be proud of. So maybe we suggest that the public good as such and the fame that they'll gain from such good public service is almost worth not taking any fee increase at all.
Other speakers? Councillor Dick.
Support her motion basically because the recommendation from NZID on page 37 recommends a base director fee of 30 to 35, a base chair fee of 54 to 63, and says, with consideration of the time commitments indicated, current remuneration levels and the nature of HBRIC Limited, the IOD consider the following fee range to be the appropriate commercial benchmarks. Then they go on to say, it is the decision of HBRIC Limited whether to opt for more moderate increases or plan a time transition to these higher levels, the higher levels being the 30 to 35 and the 54 to 63. I support the backdating, but I believe that that's an appropriate level, and also it has sensible parity with the director's fees that paid to Port of Napier. Lower than, but in, I believe, the correct proportion.
Other speakers? Councillor McGregor.
Chairman, for the reasons just stated, I too support this resolution. This is not a question of putting your hand up for public good. In the first instant, no doubt, the independent directors have been highly motivated by public good, and it's a question of how long they've got to hold their hand aloft. But the figures in this resolution, as Councillor Dick has said, fall within the recommendation, that just at the lower range of the recommendation by the Institute of Directors. So they're seen as being realistic given the responsibilities of the independent directors.
Councillor Scott.
Mr Chairman, I'm going to vote against this, and I think that even without the suggested wording that Councillor Douglas had indicated earlier, that this is for a limited time, the resolution actually does state up to financial close. And I would actually go back to page 24, and then the details are spelt out further on. The hours of the role are at the upper quartile. In other words, we are conveniently disregarding the workload. And I don't think that is being fair or honest, and it's not up to us to demand from somebody else that they should give of their time freely. These are professional directors, and at the moment we're demanding a huge amount of them. The hours of roll are at the upper quartile, and that was spelled out in some detail as to the current workload. We also, and this council is well aware, have 3 advisors who may or may not be considered deemed directors, but they are paid at a different rate, and I think that then leads to a very inequitable situation. We should be looking at treating all the people that we are demanding this workload of in a fair and equitable manner. As I say, there is a public good element in the workload that we as councillors, directors carry, but we also have to see that we are demanding at the moment a very high workload for these people. The suggestion is only to contractual close. The workload is actually going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I want these people giving 100% to it, not, well, I'm sorry, I'm in here for these hours, but don't contact me over the weekend. So I want 100% from these people, and I want to treat them fairly.